I'm Isabelle Carter, 27 years old, and I still remember the way my grandfather's voice cracked when he handed me the keys. It was a damp spring afternoon in Portland, the sky threatening rain but never quite delivering. I had just graduated from nursing school, a feat that felt impossible some days, especially with the hospital rotations during the pandemic. When Grandpa Henry clasped my hand around the keys to his 2014 silver Toyota Camry, I felt like the world finally made sense. "You earned this, Isabelle," he said, his blue eyes bright under his weathered brow. "So you can get wherever you need to be, on your own terms." I tried to thank him, but the words got tangled with tears. Inside the glove compartment, he had tucked a folded note in that looping handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards my entire life. "You deserve a solid start," it said, "and you don't need anyone's permission to go." At that moment, I believed him. The next morning, though, the permission I didn't need showed up in the form of my mother, Marianne. She stood in my small kitchen, tapping her manicured nails against the counter as she explained that the insurance would take some time to figure out. "Just a couple of weeks," she said breezily. "We'll make sure it's all handled properly." I nodded, feeling the edges of my pride dull a little. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe this was just paperwork. 2 weeks passed, then a month. Each time I called to ask about the car, there was a new reason. Emissions testing delays, DMV backlogs, the mechanic needing a part. I tried to be patient. My roommate Bree told me I was being too trusting, but what was I supposed to do? Accuse my own parents of stealing my future? One morning in August, after another vague text from Marianne, I decided to drive over to their house in Lentz without calling first. When I turned into the long gravel driveway, the Camry wasn't there. The space where it had sat under the old cedar tree was empty, except for a scattering of leaves that looked like they'd been swept clear. I went up to the porch. My father, Douglas, was there reading the paper. He didn't look up as I asked, quietly, where the car had gone. "It's safe," he muttered. "Stop worrying about things you're not ready for." That was when I realized something was wrong, really wrong, but I still didn't know what to call it. Theft felt too harsh, too final. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding I hadn't worked hard enough to untangle. I turned 27 that September, walking to shifts at the free clinic downtown, taking the bus to interviews at hospitals where I'd submitted my resume 3-4 times. Every time I passed a Camry like mine, I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't about the car. It was about the promise that I was ready, that I had earned something. And someone else had decided I hadn't. By October, the rainy season settled over Portland in earnest. Gray skies clung to everything, and the damp seemed to soak all the way through my bones. I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment over a bakery on Hawthorne with my roommate Bree, who never let me pretend everything was fine. Most evenings, I came home exhausted from temp shifts, sorting medical supplies, filling in as a patient liaison, sometimes scrubbing exam rooms. One night, I sat on the floor with a mug of cheap grocery store tea, scrolling through my email inbox, searching for something, anything that might prove the car wasn't gone. But each message from my parents was the same. Vague reassurances, no answers. I tried calling the insurance company again. The woman on the line was polite but brisk. "Ma'am, I'm afraid you're no longer listed as the primary policyholder on that vehicle," she said. I pressed the phone closer to my ear as though proximity might change the truth. "Can you tell me who is?" I asked, though I already knew. "There's a Marianne Carter listed as the owner," she said. "I'm sorry." When I hung up, my hands were trembling. I thought about the note Grandpa had left in the glove box, about the way he'd smiled when he handed me the keys. I knew he'd never have signed over the title without telling me. 2 days later, I skipped my afternoon shift and took the bus to the DMV. The waiting room was filled with people slumped in plastic chairs, clutching little paper numbers. I sat there for over an hour before my number flashed across the screen. The clerk behind the counter couldn't have been more than 20. She typed in the license plate and squinted at her monitor. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone gently pitying. "This vehicle is registered to Marianne Carter. It was transferred back in June." I swallowed hard, my throat dry as paper. "But it was a gift," I whispered. "My grandfather gave it to me." She looked uncomfortable, glancing at the line behind me. "Maybe you should talk to him," she suggested softly. I left with nothing. No proof, no resolution. Just the same dull ache in my chest that had been there since that first day my parents told me to wait. That winter, I cobbled together work. Sometimes 3 different temp jobs in a week, and tried not to think about how many times I'd walk to interviews in the rain, my shoes soaked through. Bree kept offering me rides, but every time she did, it felt like another reminder of what I didn't have. "You have to tell your grandfather," she said one night as we shared leftover stir-fry. "I can't," I told her. "He'd feel like he failed me, like he picked the wrong person to trust." So I didn't. For months, I carried the silence like an extra weight. I told myself maybe I was being dramatic, maybe I didn't deserve that car after all. My parents certainly seemed convinced I wasn't ready. But in May, everything shifted. Grandpa Henry called me, his voice warm as ever. He told me he was hosting a big family barbecue for Memorial Day. He wanted to see everyone, and he especially wanted to see me. "I'm firing up the grill," he said. "And I can't wait to see you pull up in that Camry. Bet she's been good to you." I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching the phone, and for a moment, I thought I'd be sick. That's great, Grandpa," I managed. My voice sounded too bright. "Will Marianne and Douglas be there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Of course," he chuckled. "It's not a Carter family gathering if your mom doesn't bring her potato salad no one eats." I promised him I'd come. I hung up the phone and sat in the dark for a long time, the truth finally too heavy to ignore. I hadn't been mistaken. I hadn't made it up. My mother had taken something that didn't belong to her, and everyone around me had let it happen. On Memorial Day morning, I got up early. I took the bus across town, balancing a store-bought peach pie on my knees. I wore the same navy sundress I'd graduated in, hoping it might remind me of who I'd been before all the excuses and deflections. When the bus pulled up in front of Grandpa's house, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stay on that bus, let the doors close, and pretend I'd never known about any of this. But another part of me, smaller but steadier, knew I had to walk up those steps and face whatever waited. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology. I just wanted the truth. The moment I stepped onto Grandpa Henry's porch, the scent of charcoal and rosemary hit me, warm and familiar. For a second, I almost forgot why I was there. Grandpa stood at the top of the steps, waving with one hand while holding a plate of marinated chicken with the other. His dog, Baxter, trotted in circles at his feet, tail wagging like it had a motor. "There she is," Grandpa called, his voice bright as a summer morning. "Isabelle, come say hello." I forced a smile, hugging him carefully so I wouldn't drop the pie. His hands were still strong, steady on my back. For a moment, it was almost enough to pretend everything was fine, that I was just another granddaughter coming home for a holiday cookout. But when I glanced at the driveway, my chest tightened. The Camry wasn't parked in front of the garage. Or maybe it was, hidden behind the wooden fence like it never existed at all. Inside, the house was alive with chatter. My aunts were arranging mismatched plates of deviled eggs and corn on the cob. My cousins were draped over the couches, swiping through their phones or pouring sweet tea into plastic cups. Everywhere I turned, I saw pieces of a family I used to believe in without question, but today I couldn't look at any of them for long. We settled into folding chairs in the backyard, the evening sun slipping behind the maple trees. Grandpa flipped burgers and told stories from his days as a city electrician. Everyone laughed and nodded, filling the air with that easy familiarity I'd missed. I kept my eyes on my paper plate, barely touching the coleslaw I'd spooned out of politeness. Then, midway through the meal, Grandpa raised his lemonade like a toast. His voice rang out over the clink of forks and the low hum of cicadas. "Just want to say how proud I am of Isabelle. Graduated top of her class, working hard, and driving that Camry like a champ. That car should last you a good decade if you take care of it, kiddo." My entire body went cold. I felt every pair of eyes slide in my direction. A few people smiled, waiting for me to respond, maybe expecting me to laugh and nod. But I couldn't. My mouth went dry. I opened it once, then closed it again, searching for any words that wouldn't betray how much I was shaking. That's when my mother spoke. Marianne's voice floated across the table, smooth as satin, just the right touch of humor and concern. "Oh, Dad," she said, dabbing the corner of her mouth with a napkin. She decided not to keep it, remember? It was too much to manage while she was job hunting. We've just been using it to run errands for her. No harm done. Her smile was effortless, like she was sharing an endearing little anecdote. The perfect, reasonable mother. I felt something crack behind my ribs. No one questioned her. Not one person. A couple of cousins nodded vaguely, returning to their plates. Someone chuckled. The moment passed around me like a breeze. But I sat frozen, my heart thudding so hard it was making me dizzy. That voice, Marianne's gentle, reasonable voice, had soothed me to sleep when I was little, explained away every childhood heartbreak. But tonight, it felt like a blade slipped between my ribs. I stared down at my plate. The macaroni salad blurred. My fingers trembled in my lap. I had spent months telling myself maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough to get the car back. But hearing her spin that lie so easily, seeing everyone accept it without question, I knew the truth. They hadn't taken the car because they were worried about me. They'd taken it because they could. And they'd counted on me to stay quiet. I forced myself to look up. Grandpa's smile had dimmed, but he didn't look concerned, just a little puzzled. He nodded slowly. "Well, as long as someone's getting some use out of it," he said. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. No one else looked at me. They passed platters, refilled glasses, swapped stories. I could have been a ghost. For the rest of the meal, I didn't speak. I nodded when someone asked if I wanted more corn. I smiled politely when my aunt offered me dessert. But inside, the silence was roaring. I'd spent so long waiting for someone to come to my defense to say, "Hold on, Isabelle worked for that car. She earned it." But no one did. And as I sat there, listening to my mother chat about her volunteer work, I realized no one ever would. Not unless I made them. After the plates were cleared and the paper lanterns were strung along the fence, I slipped into the house. My feet carried me past the kitchen, down the hall, and into the garage. The overhead light was out, but a sliver of dusk spilled through the window, pooling across the concrete floor. In the far corner, behind a folding table and a stack of patio chairs, sat the Camry. My Camry. I stood there a long moment, the shadows stretching around me. Then I reached for the door handle, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid. My hand closed around the door handle, and for a second, my breath caught in my throat. The metal was cool from the evening air, the same familiar curve my grandfather's palm had rested on when he handed me the keys. I eased the door open. The interior smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older, something like time itself. I slid into the driver's seat. It was pushed so far back that my feet barely reached the pedals. Marianne always liked the seat all the way down. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I sat there with my hands resting in my lap, feeling the quiet soak into my skin. This wasn't about a car. It was never about a car. They had taken it because they didn't believe I deserved it. Because my independence scared them more than my dependence ever would. I closed the door softly and looked around the garage. A lawnmower leaned against the far wall. An old shelf held jars of nails and paint cans. Everything looked normal, unremarkable. The Camry was just another thing they'd folded into their version of the truth, but I hadn't imagined any of it. I pulled my phone from my bag and opened the folder I'd created months ago. Documents I'd saved late at night, too ashamed to tell anyone. I tapped the first file, an email chain with the insurance company. I'm writing to confirm whether my name remains on the policy for the 2014 Toyota Camry. Hi, Ms. Carter. Unfortunately, you are no longer listed. The policy was transferred by the current owner in June. I tapped the next file, a scanned letter from the DMV. Registration transferred to Marianne Carter, June 5th. Then the next. A rejection notice from the insurance company when I'd tried to get coverage in my own name. And last, a voice recording. I hesitated before playing it. Even after everything, I wasn't sure I could bear to hear it again. But I pressed play. Marianne's voice drifted out, steady and unhurried. That car, Isabelle. Come on. You're not ready for that kind of responsibility yet. Let us handle it. You'll thank us later. I closed my eyes. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. From something clearer, sharper. Certainty. They hadn't just taken the car. They'd taken my story. They'd rewritten it so convincingly that even I had started to doubt myself. But not anymore. I exited the garage, shutting the door behind me. The back screen creaked as I stepped into the house. The living room was mostly empty, the stragglers still outside near the grill. Grandpa was in his recliner by the fireplace, a photo album balanced on his knees. Baxter lay curled on the rug, snoring softly. Grandpa didn't look up right away. He turned another page in the album, pausing to tap a photo with his thumb. I stood there watching him, feeling the last pieces of my fear slip away. Finally, he lifted his head. His eyes met mine, steady, kind, never once making me feel small. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "Everything all right?" My throat felt tight, but my voice came out steady. "I think you should see something," I said. He raised his eyebrows, gently closing the album. "What kind of something?" I crossed the room, feeling the carpet scratch under my soles. I held out my phone. He took it without question, as if he already knew that whatever I was about to show him mattered. I tapped the first document, the DMV confirmation. His gaze didn't waver as he read it. Then the insurance letter. Then the email chain. I pressed play on the recording. For a moment, the only sound was Marianne's voice filling the room. "You'll thank us later." The recording ended. Grandpa didn't say anything. His eyes stayed on the dark fireplace bricks, his jaw working as if he were chewing over words he hadn't yet decided to speak. When he finally looked at me, his expression was different, some blend of sorrow and resolve I couldn't name. "So," he murmured, "you're telling me they lied to me, took the car, told you to stay quiet, and then sat here tonight acting like it was a favor." I nodded. He didn't shout. He didn't swear. He just closed his eyes, breathing slow and deep, like he was counting to 10. When he opened them, they were clear as a sky after rain. "Get everyone in the living room," he said, rising to his feet. His voice was calm, but it carried an edge I'd never heard before. "Now," he added, in a tone that left no room for argument. I turned and walked down the hall, past the kitchen where my aunts were laughing over slices of pie, past the patio door where Marianne chatted with my uncle. "Grandpa wants everyone inside," I said, louder than I'd intended. One by one, the voices died down. Chairs scraped the patio stones. Footsteps fell behind me as the family trickled in. I felt my pulse in my throat. My hands were slick with sweat. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The living room felt smaller than I remembered, crowded with cousins still holding half-finished plates of peach cobbler and glasses of iced tea. The scent of barbecue smoke clung to everyone's clothes. No one spoke. Grandpa Henry stood in front of the fireplace, arms folded behind his back like he was about to deliver a sermon. His gaze swept over each face, pausing on my mother and father last. Marianne smoothed her coral blouse, her smile just a shade too bright. Douglas stayed near the doorway, studying the rug like he was hoping it might swallow him whole. "Everything okay, Dad?" Marianne asked, her tone all innocence and gentle confusion. Grandpa didn't answer. He turned his head slightly, meeting my eyes. The nod he gave me was so small, I almost missed it. But it was enough. I stepped forward, heart hammering. My knees felt unsteady, but my voice didn't shake. "I wasn't going to say anything," I began, my words carrying across the hush. "I thought maybe it would sort itself out. Maybe I was making a big deal over nothing." A few people shifted uncomfortably, but since the car came up, and since my mother decided to tell a different version of the story in front of all of you, I think it's time you hear the truth. I pulled out my phone. My palms were damp. Marianne's smile didn't waver, though I saw a flicker of something, nervousness, or maybe recognition, pass behind her eyes. I tapped the screen mirror button. The big flat-screen TV above the fireplace flickered, then displayed the first document. The DMV letter confirming the title transfer. I read it aloud, my voice flat, unembellished. "This letter confirms the registration transfer of the 2014 Toyota Camry from Isabelle Carter to Marianne Carter, effective June 5th. A murmur rippled through the room. I swiped to the next screen. The insurance rejection notice. Policy terminated due to change of ownership. Applicant no longer authorized. Then the email chain, each message confirming in polite corporate language that I no longer had any legal claim to the vehicle. I didn't look away from the screen. Finally, I tapped the last file. The recording began to play. Marianne's voice filled the air, clear and unapologetic. "That car, Isabelle. Come on, you're not ready for that kind of responsibility yet. Let us handle it. You'll thank us later." Silence settled over the room like dust. Someone's glass clinked too hard against a side table. A cousin gasped. Marianne laughed. High, brittle, a sound I'd never heard from her before. "That's taken out of context," she said quickly, looking around the room for agreement. "You know how easily things get twisted." But no one chimed in. No one nodded along. Grandpa's gaze didn't leave her face. "Context," he repeated softly, the word brittle in his mouth. "You took the car I gave her. You changed the title without telling me or her. And you lied about it. You lied to me tonight. In my house." Marianne's smile finally faltered. Douglas cleared his throat, still not meeting anyone's eye. "We thought it was best," he mumbled. "She's still young. She doesn't understand how complicated this stuff is." "Don't," Grandpa said, his voice cracking through the quiet like a splitting branch. "Don't you dare." His gaze moved back to me. "I'm calling my lawyer first thing in the morning," he said, voice steady again. "That title will be put back in your name. Fully. Legally. And if either of them touches another dime related to that vehicle, they'll answer to me." No one spoke. Marianne's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Douglas looked like he was praying for the floor to open up. Across the room, an aunt whispered to her husband, her expression somewhere between pity and shock. A cousin I hadn't seen in a year shifted away from the couch where Marianne sat, her plate balanced in her lap. Grandpa took a breath, his shoulders lifting and falling as if he were shedding the weight of a decade. "Let this be clear," he said, his voice low but certain. "I love my family, but I will not confuse silence with kindness. This young woman has worked, scraped, and earned more than most of you know. She didn't ask for charity. She didn't ask for special treatment. She just wanted what was already hers, and you tried to take it from her." He paused. "You didn't succeed." I felt my throat tighten. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't from shame. He turned to me again. His eyes were bright with something I couldn't name. Pride, maybe, or simply relief that the truth had finally been spoken out loud. "You didn't let them," he said, "and I am proud of you." No one else said a word. One by one, my relatives slipped out to the kitchen, their conversations hushed. Marianne gathered her purse and her composure, but she didn't look at me as she passed. Douglas trailed behind her, silent as ever. Neither of them said goodbye to Grandpa. And for the first time in my life, he didn't say goodbye to them either. When the front door closed, the quiet felt clean, like the air after a thunderstorm. I hadn't won anything tonight, but I hadn't lost myself, either. The house was nearly empty. The last of my cousins were gathering their kids and their Tupperware, their voices hushed in a way they had never been around me before. Baxter wandered through the living room, sniffing crumbs off the carpet like nothing had happened. Grandpa Henry sank slowly into his recliner. The photo album sat forgotten on the side table, a half-finished story we'd never gone back to. I eased into the ottoman across from him. My heart was still racing, but there was no fear left in it, just a kind of quiet steadiness. "I never wanted it to come out like that," I said finally, my voice low. Grandpa shook his head. "It needed to," he replied. "Sometimes the truth waits, but it doesn't stay buried forever." He rubbed a hand over his face, looking older than I'd ever seen him. But when he looked back at me, his gaze was clear. "I thought if I just stayed quiet," I admitted, "maybe they'd give it back. Maybe they'd apologize." "They weren't planning to," he said simply. He didn't say it with bitterness, only certainty. "You did the right thing. You kept your dignity. And when the time came, you told the truth." I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight, but the tears didn't come. Grandpa reached into his shirt pocket, pulling out an envelope so worn the edges had gone soft. He held it out to me. "I kept the original bill of sale," he said, "just in case." I took it with both hands, holding it like something fragile. My name was there in his handwriting, the date from the summer I'd graduated, a promise in black ink. "We'll take this to the DMV first thing Monday," he continued, "together." "Thank you," I whispered. He smiled, not the big, proud grin he wore at barbecues, but something smaller, something softer. "You didn't ask for a fight," he said. "You just wanted what was yours. That's not selfish. That's fair." I nodded. For the first time in almost a year, I believed it. Monday morning came warm and bright, as if the city had decided to shake off the last chill of spring just for me. Grandpa insisted on wearing a button-down and slacks. "Government offices deserve respect, even if the lines don't," he joked. At the DMV, the clerk barely glanced at the documents before nodding briskly. "So, we're reassigning this vehicle to Isabelle Carter," she confirmed. "Yes," Grandpa answered before I could open my mouth. I signed the paperwork with hands that didn't shake. Grandpa signed the affidavit. Just like that, my name returned to where it belonged. "That's it?" I asked, almost laughing. "Sometimes things don't need to be dramatic," Grandpa said. "Just done." When we walked back into the bright parking lot, the manila folder felt lighter in my arms. On the way home, we stopped at a diner off 82nd Avenue. The tables were formica, cracked at the edges, and the coffee tasted like it had been sitting since sunrise. Grandpa ordered eggs over easy. I got pancakes I barely touched. When the check came, he reached across the table and set a folded slip of paper between us. The note he'd left in the glove compartment that first day. I opened it slowly, smoothing out the crease. So you can go wherever you want, on your own terms. This time, I didn't doubt a single word. That afternoon, I stood alone in the garage, hand resting on the Camry's hood. Sunlight spilled through the window, making the silver paint glow like something reborn. I didn't take a picture, didn't text anyone an update. I slid into the driver's seat. The cushion was in the right position now. My position. I turned the ignition. The engine caught instantly, steady, warm, familiar. The garage door creaked open and light flooded in. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt ready. Ready to drive away without needing permission. Ready to stop apologizing for wanting what was already mine. I backed out slowly, the car rolling smooth and quiet onto the street. I didn't blast music or call Bree to tell her. I didn't rehearse what I'd say if someone asked what happened, because no one needed to ask. I turned onto the main road, past the grocery store where I'd walked in the rain so many times, past the park where I'd sat wondering if I'd imagined everything. And somewhere between the second stoplight and the old white church, I exhaled. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't closure. It was something quieter. Something like return. No apology. No ceremony. Just the keys.